Hey, we're Amy and Christina, two friends who got pregnant around the same time, started an Instagram to vent about how much we didn't know, and realized there were a ton of you out there who felt the exact same way.
Who'd have thought? Not us. But once we realized we weren't the only ones frantically Googling things at 3 a.m., we thought, why not take it up a notch?
And here we are with a podcast. We're bringing in the experts on all things pregnancy, parenting, and women's health because, let's be real, we're all just trying to survive this journey.
So whether you're here for the real talk, expert advice, or just need some adult conversation between diaper changes, we got you. Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew podcast. Thanks for being part of our growing community. So Jennifer, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. I greatly appreciate it. We are on the What I Wish I Knew podcast, which means we're going to learn a lot today. Jennifer, I've stalked you on Instagram and on your website. And obviously, if you know Bangs, which is a mutual connection of ours, then you must be awesome. But can you tell us the story of how you got here? You're a nutritionist, a practitioner, a personal trainer. You are so many things. How did you get here?
How did I get it? It was never the plan, to be completely honest. So I remember when I was really, really young, I wanted to be a tap dancing nurse. Never took a tap lesson in my life and hate vomit. So I don't know how I could have done that. But all my life I was a dancer. I did dance at university, but I got injured. I couldn't continue doing that. And I couldn't perform. I couldn't dance to the level that I wanted to make a career out of it, or certainly not performing, certainly not studying for ballet and contemporary degree. So what can dancers do? We can do a grapevine. We can hear a beat of music. We can count to 8. So I got into fitness. No offense, but that's what we can do. So I was doing some dance teaching. I was doing some choreography, a little bit of performing. Fun fact, I taught Zac Efron how to do the foxtrot for a movie. I know, that's a fun fact, right? But that doesn't actually pay the bills, especially not being a single girl living in London. Nothing pays the bills being a single girl living in London. So it's like, well, how do I survive? So I was like, what's going to be easy for me? I'm going to take what at the time was the YMCA exercise to music certificate. It's basically the certificate you take to be an aerobics instructor. So I took that, and so I combined that with all of the things that I was doing. And then at one point I said, I've had enough of this. I want a change of scenery. So I upped and went to be the bikini boot camp manager at Sala Tulum in the middle of Mexico. Never learned Spanish, never been going to Mexico, but I remember seeing it in a magazine. Remember when we had those? And it was, and Demi Moore was running across the beach in a black bikini. And I was like, I'd like to go there. So I looked at it and I was like, actually, I probably could work there. So off I went, leaving my comfortable life in London to work at Sala's bikini boot camp. And so I did that for almost a year. And I came back and forth a couple of times. And then I came back to London and I was like, okay, what do I do? There's lots of back and forths and broken hearts and all of these things as it is in your late 20s in London. But eventually I ended up as one of the first 5 instructors at Barkle, which was London's first spa studio, which is, I think, how you and I might be connected. I'm not sure.
Probably.
One day we'll work out that family tree. So there was 5 of us, one studio at the time in Chelsea. We were really the first kind of boutique fitness studio, and this was back in 2012. Personally and professionally, 2 things kind of happened there. Professionally, I had some gut health issues that were modern medicine, conventional medicine held no hope for me. So I was dealing with that challenge. So one of probably my biggest mentor was a holistic nutritionist, a biosignature modulation practitioner. She helped me with the gut health piece of that. So as part of that, I was like, you know what, I want more. That took me to going to study for certifications and then eventually going back to school to study nutritional science. So that was kind of that part. Now, also at that time, I met my now husband, who was the original Ted Lasso. So he was the only American working in professional rugby in the UK. And our paths had crossed, but we'd never actually got it together. By the time we started dating, he only had a couple of months left back in the UK. His visa ran out. We were not about to do the visa marriage thing then. So we did long distance again. And I'm 43, so it's a lot of long story short. Long story short,
I'm here for it.
There we go. That's the whole thing. He and I decided to get married. I then came over to the US. This was in June of 2013. And since then, I've really built my career here in the US. I started working at Exhale, which is one of the bar studios. I was very lucky that I had to jump into a job. And then I started teaching at some more fitness studios, decided that actually nutrition was my love and my passion. Started to move a little bit more into that way. And now, 11 years later, I'm here chatting to you.
I love it.
Just a
journey. But you know what? Everything kind of leads you into the next thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about your journey is that you have this physical sense, but then also you have all this nutrition thing happening at the same time. But what drove you to kind of jump into women's wellness, women's nutrition, specifically like hormonal nutrition as well? Because that's a lot of what you focus on. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah. So, naturally as a woman, I attract other women. Can I work with men? Absolutely. Do I really want to? Absolutely not. And really, in the nicest way. But really, as I got older, my clients got older, and I partner with a doctor in New York. We have something called a regenerative aesthetics program. So again, all of these pieces of the puzzle coming together. I was the head nutritionist for a retreat in Switzerland. It sounds way more fancy than it was. Working on retreats is so hard. And I actually did that through one of the ex-owners in the bar studio I worked at in London. So I never burn my bridges, and I always look after those professional relationships. One of the guests on that retreat,
that's a life hack right there.
Life hack right there. Never, burning bridges if you never want to talk to that person again. That's absolutely fine.
Totally.
But I still have connections and clients that I had almost 20 years ago. Yeah. So met the dermatologist. She was a guest at the retreat in Switzerland. And she said, I've been looking for a nutritionist for my dermatology practice on the Upper East Side in New York. I can't find anyone who fits the bill because I'd done some sessions and some workshops with her. Would you be interested? I was like, yes. And we started that in 2017. And because her patients they're doing the fillers, the Botox, the peels, all of those things. I'm very pro all of that kind of stuff that makes you feel great. Her patients were not getting the results because they didn't have the raw materials. So if we're trying to make new collagen, we're trying to make new skin cells, we're trying to minimize inflammation. If that's not happening from the inside, it's not going to happen from the outside.
Totally.
Now, as our patients got older, as my clients got older, as I got older, I'm 43, I'll be 44 next month, we started to see that a different level of support was needed. And what worked for you in your 20s and 30s might not work for you in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And then the other piece of this was I was approached by Versally, which is a menopause platform, to be their own non-medical experts. So I was like, hell yes, I'd absolutely love to do that. So that's where, and then earlier this year, I kind of made that jump to say, okay, I have women in their 20s and 30s that work with me, but most of what I do is working with women over 40. My oldest client is 79. I'm really helping them through the menopause transition. That's how that came about.
That is so amazing because I feel like even in the last, probably when you started, there's so much more momentum behind this topic. Like part of me thinks it's because I'm only becoming aware. I'm 36, right? And pregnant with my second kid. And I'm becoming aware of how nutrition impacts my hormones. But I feel like 10 years ago, this wasn't a huge topic like it is right now, right?
It absolutely wasn't. And in 10 years ago, let's be real, we were still in a lot of toxic diet culture. I mean, goodness me, I perpetuated that as part of, I remember being, we didn't know better. We didn't know any better. And that's what people wanted. And I remember that, and I cringe at this now, but I remember being posted in Telegraph saying that sweat is your fat burning. Like, oh my goodness, someone needs to tell that girl something. But we didn't know any better. And we didn't really know that, food is fuel, yes. But food is information for our body. Food tells our hormones what to do. And there are so many hormones. We think of hormones and we just think of like estrogen and testosterone, our sex hormones. We have insulin, we have cortisol, we have so many different hormones. And what we eat tells those hormones what to do in the body. And just as being pregnant, that's going to have a different hormonal response, being in perimenopause, postmenopause, having regular menstrual cycles, all of these things, we can optimize these things through diet, nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, etc.
And I feel like already that is such like the emoji with like the brain just exploding. Like that's how that already feels, is that like everything is tied together.
Yeah.
And can we get nerdy about it for a second?
Bring it on. I love to get nerdy about these things.
Like, tell me more about, what the science behind that looks like. Food being adjusting hormone. Like, how does that actually work?
So we call it an endocrine system for a reason. So all of our hormones are interconnected. And I like to say that insulin and cortisol, these are our master hormones. So you see a lot of nonsense on social media. I'm going to call it spade a spade.
Awesome.
We see a lot of nonsense on social media about having a carrot salad a day and balance your hormones.
Right.
Yeah, that's not how it works. Or there is a new trend for cortisol coaches. Now, yeah, what school you go to be a cortisol coach, but basically you're an MLM selling products. And if you only know how to use one hormone, you know nothing about the body. Okay.
Yeah.
I get a bit ranty on a Friday afternoon. Okay.
It's our therapist.
Okay. So a very basic way. Think of insulin and cortisol as our two master hormones. We have to get those optimized, not balanced. So even when we're saying the word balanced hormones, that doesn't mean anything because we secrete certain hormones at different times during the day. That's our circadian rhythm. And as women, before we go through menopause, at certain times of the month, that's our infradian rhythm. Men have one rhythm, circadian rhythm. Women, circadian rhythm and infradian rhythm.
Because of course they have to be more complex. Of course
we do. We can handle it. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
I always say to my husband, like, if you could take my period cramps for me, would you? And he's like, no, I wouldn't. Thanks a lot for that. But really, so what we're thinking about that we need to be secreting different levels of hormones throughout different times of the day and different times of the month. That phrase hormone balance means nothing. What we want is hormone optimization or hormone regulation. So before we even think about optimizing our sex hormones, we need to optimize insulin and cortisol because they're going to have a big impact over here. So if I've got a client that comes to me and they are, let's say maybe having irregular periods or they're going through perimenopause and they're like, I want to optimize over here. I know the listeners can't see me, but I'm pointing up in one direction. What we have to do first is optimize insulin and cortisol because those are going to affect everything else. So, for example, if we're going to take those two key hormones, insulin is the regulator of blood sugar balance. So when we eat something that is high in sugar, high in carbs, our blood sugar goes up. What this does is this signals to the pancreas to release insulin. Insulin then comes out into the bloodstream, and in someone with a healthy metabolism, that insulin is going to help get the fuel, the sugar, into the cell where it can be used as fuel. If we're metabolically unhealthy, then it can get stored as fat. So that's what insulin does. When we eat too many high sugar, high carb foods, we get something called insulin resistance, where the body may be pumping out all of this insulin, but it just can't keep up with the amount of glucose that is coming in. Or the cell itself is actually becoming desensitized because it's had these repeated hits of insulin. So that's insulin. Wow. So that's insulin. Oh, we're going to nerd out on this. Okay. So, but just like any of our hormones, we need insulin to live because if we didn't have insulin, we wouldn't get it into the cell. But we need it to be slow and steady and released in appropriate amounts. Now, we also have cortisol. People think of cortisol as our stress hormone, but cortisol is actually our stress and energy hormone. So without cortisol, we wouldn't wake up in the morning. So cortisol is there as, again, in terms of that balance versus optimization, we want our cortisol to be higher in the morning, because when our cortisol raises, our melatonin and our sleep hormone goes down. So it wakes us up. It gives us a boost of energy. So that's what happens on a regular day. We would have that burst of energy in the morning. It would be kind of nice and steady throughout the day. That 3 o'clock slump is absolutely normal because that's cortisol lowering. And then we want it to be as low as possible by the evening. So when cortisol is low, melatonin is secreted. And that's what we call a cortisol curve. Now, also, we know cortisol is secreted at times of stress. Now, this used to be it's an evolutionary biology response. It would be when we are being chased across the savannah by a saber-toothed tiger. I used to say dinosaur, and then people were like, dinosaurs and humans never. I'm like, history was not my
Listen, you're here for the nutrition.
I'm here for the nutrition. Like, what was that dinosaur eating? No. So the saber-toothed tiger, it's chasing us across the savannah. Our cortisol level raises. What that does is that increases our heart rate, our blood pressure. It actually filters blood from our brain down to our muscles. It makes us prepared to fight or flight. Fantastic if we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Don't know about you, I haven't seen many saber-toothed tigers around. Well, we don't have them in Massachusetts. Don't think you guys have them there.
No.
The body still has this response if we get an email we don't like, if we feel like we're going to miss a flight. This was me on Sunday all day long. If no one likes our Instagram post. If your cat hurries up and you're just about to jump on a podcast. That didn't happen to me at all. So we have what we call we have a maladaptive response to stress in our modern day world because we're being hit by these stresses so much. And our body doesn't know the difference between no one liking our Instagram post and being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. So that's just 2 examples. That's insulin and cortisol. Then, of course, we have all of those other hormones which have their own rhythms, their own time for secretion, whether that's during the day, whether that's at certain times of the month. And they are all impacted by our other hormones, our diet, our lifestyle, our stress, our exercise, our exposure to sunlight, etc.
So then naturally that means that when we go through, especially as women, like as we go through different hormonal changes, right? Like it starts with, getting your period for the first time, like that's one hormonal change. And then you go through it, as you get older, as you have if you decide to have children. But then there's also this thing called perimenopause, which like I had never heard again before. Like I knew menopause existed because my mom was having hot flashes. But now that I think about it, I also recall her when I was like in high school going through a significant gut issue around the time where I think either when she was starting menopause or right before. And I'm only starting to put 2 and 2 together where it was like, oh my God, was she going through perimenopause? So like, WTF is perimenopause.
Yeah. And I think you really hit the nail on the head that a lot of women in their 30s and 40s, our moms were just about to talk to us about periods, let alone perimenopause. And again, I also have this vague, I think my mom had a hysterectomy, but I was younger at the time. I didn't know what was going on. So then she had a medically induced menopause. And I remember, you get these vague rememberings, right? What was that? And now you know what it was. You kind of go, oh, that was connected to that. That was connected to that.
Yeah. And then you feel really bad for how you treated your mother when you were a teenager.
So hopefully the new generation of girls and the teenagers now, it's so funny. One of my best friends back home has a 13-year-old and she follows me on Instagram and I follow her. So I learn all about cheerleading and she learns all about perimenopause. And she likes all my posts about perimenopause.
Sounds like a fair deal.
Right. I know all about being a base and a flyer and she knows all about estrogen and hormone replacement therapy.
Perfect.
But my point being, hopefully when these girls get to be women and go through perimenopause, they won't have that. Was that what was happening to my mom? But it really is the WTF. You're absolutely right. And the reason being is that we haven't been taught about what happens in perimenopause. And then the other thing is that so many different things could happen in perimenopause. And my perimenopause is going to be very different to yours. The perimenopause, as a definition, is everything that leads up to menopause. So let's kind of go forward and then come back again. So menopause is actually just one day. And menopause is a retrospective diagnosis. So menopause is the one day, 12 months after your last menstrual period.
So you're in menopause already on the floor.
We've got chills on the floor. We've got brains exploding. You're in menopause for one day. Anything after that day, you are post-menopause.
Wow.
Okay. Menopause one day, everything else is post-menopause. So with women living into our 90s and our 100s, if we are post-menopausal around the age of our early 50s, we've got a good 40 years in post-menopause. And this is why it's so important to start understanding that stage of the life. But what comes before menopause, that one day, is perimenopause. And this typically for most women starts 7 to 10 years before that one day of menopause.
Now I'm doing like my mental calculations now where I'm like, I'm 36 years old. So like, am I going to have like this baby and then I'm going to go straight from postpartum into perimenopause? I feel like, oh my God, that could very much happen.
Now, it would be a little early. We tend to see typical age for perimenopause tend to be kind of early to mid 40s.
Okay. Whew. So I have a couple of years.
You have a couple of years, but perimenopause can start post 35.
Oh, okay.
One of the things is that we don't have a diagnosis for perimenopause. It's not like we have a blood test. And the reason being is because in perimenopause, our hormones start to fluctuate. So if you're in perimenopause, you could get your hormones checked one day and they're going to be completely different from what they are the next day. So really, we start to see perimenopause from symptoms rather than from a blood test. Now, you can do a blood test. I did one a couple of weeks ago, and I'm in very, very early perimenopause, which makes sense. So 43. I've probably been having some symptoms since I was about 42. So typically we see kind of that early 40s. That's when a lot of people go into perimenopause. Now, there are other reasons to go into early perimenopause and early menopause, things like surgery, illness, etc. But if we're talking generally, anything from 35 plus, but typically early to mid 40s. And then you have 7 to 10 years in perimenopause. This is what is typical. So for me, if I'm looking at that, I'm probably going to experience menopause somewhere around 50, 51, 52, up to mid 50s, which is probably normal. Or let's say, I don't want to say normal, typical.
Yeah.
So for you, my biggest piece of advice is once baby is born, is really looking at your health, getting your hormones as optimized as you can so you have an easier, never going to say easier ride postpartum, and then you're as prepared for perimenopause as you possibly can. And I say easier because, and this is probably another podcast, the whole focus on health after birth is about the baby and not about mom.
Oh yeah, we can definitely, we'll schedule that.
That's a whole other one.
We'll schedule that one in. But yeah, it's so fascinating to me because even throughout this process, and I'm sure it's the same for, you where you're at, nobody has ever asked me about what I'm eating. Like my OB hasn't asked. It's been on me to do the research, right? To figure out what I should be eating now and what I need to eat postpartum as well. So like, I guess my next question is, okay, we understand when perimenopause can start. Are there tests that we can take? Like, I know you're a resource, but like, what is it that we actually can action to be like, okay, how do I monitor my hormone levels to figure out what is optimized and what isn't?
Yeah. So here's the thing about perimenopause, your hormones are for people that can't see, I'm doing a roller coaster action. So we're not going to be able to test hormones for optimization. We're going to just have to do everything that we can to look after our blood sugar, our insulin, our cortisol, our inflammation, our cardiovascular disease, our bone density, our muscle mass, because those are the things that we could have an impact on. I know that sounds like a long list.
Yes, it's just like, no pressure. Let me just put my job.
No, exactly. Oh, it is an absolute full-time job. But the other thing I would say is when we do get into our 40s, we have to realize, or we should be aware of the fact that it can be perimenopause and. So, for example, or perimenopause adjacent, let's say. So, for example, we often see women having downregulated thyroid or thyroid issues or even thyroid autoimmune condition up in their 40s. Now, that could be because they're 40, they're under stress. We typically find in our 40s and 50s, you've got older parents, kids at college, really stressful jobs, all of the things. So in our 40s and 50s, we have a ton of responsibility. That can a ton of stress, and that can affect our thyroid. But can the hormonal changes that in perimenopause affect our thyroid? Absolutely. You mentioning that your mum had gut health issues, that can absolutely definitely see gut health and digestion decline as part of perimenopause. So whilst a hormone test might not be affected, if women are having perimenopause-like symptoms, don't just assume that it's perimenopause and don't just get fobbed off by your doctor by saying, oh, it's just perimenopause. Make sure that you're having your annual physical, get your thyroid levels checked, get your inflammation levels checked, see what you can do about your gut health, because often it's perimenopause and or perimenopause adjacent.
Oh my God.
I know. Lots to do, right?
I know, but it feels like it really honestly, when I'm looking at it kind of from, looking at the forest versus looking at the trees, what it looks like is it looks like a whole lifestyle change, right? Like as a society, we've kind of been fed one way of how we're supposed to go through life. And it just sounds like we need to shift priorities, right? And focusing more on what our nutrition looks like, what we're putting into our bodies, how we're moving our bodies, and being more nuanced, right? Because it feels very black and white sometimes as women, right? One second I'm hearing I need to do HIIT. The next time I'm hearing I need to do like low intensity, steady state, whatever they want to call it now.
Yep.
Is that kind of the truth where it's like, it is so many different shades of gray that it's like, and we're still learning.
So, and this is, and we are still learning. And that's it. So kind of going back to that point, why we're still learning is that typically since medical trials began, we didn't do them on women. There's so much of the medical research. Yeah, this is the whole of it.
It's just like the deepest of sighs.
If you want a really great book that is so interesting that will make you so angry, there is a book called Unwell Women. And it plots out the history of women's healthcare from the Greek times when they used to think that our uteruses would wander around the body to kind of now. And it really explains why we're at what we're at. It's fascinating, but it will make you really angry. So that's just a tick.
I'm putting my finger on my heart in my heart right now.
So we don't have a lot of literature on what works for A, for women, and B, certainly not for perimenopause and menopausal women. But there are some basics that we can all be doing better, whether we're 20 or whether we're 50. Eating real food, minimizing added sugar, minimizing processed food, drinking more water, eating more protein, eating more veggies, getting our sleep, getting our steps in, going to strength training. That's really kind of that overall, minimizing or reducing alcohol or eliminating alcohol. That's really the big piece of the puzzle. But we probably all find if we wanted to drop 5 to 10 pounds in our 20s or 30s, we probably weren't doing it in a healthy way. But we could probably do it if we did a ton more cardio and cut our calories. I'm not saying that's healthy, but we could probably do it. Those things just don't work when we get into our 40s because we have these hormonal shifts that changes our physiology, so changes our metabolism, changes our hormone regulation. So really, when we get to our 40s, yes, we do need to make some changes. Number one is to increase our protein intake. So as we get into our 40s, we have something called sarcopenia, which is that loss of lean muscle mass. So we need more protein to add to that. Also, our lowering estrogen levels, that also affects our lean muscle mass. So more protein. If we're taking more protein into the diet, we want to complement that with strength training. Again, and getting that lean muscle mass, but also strength training is so important for bone density, which we know lowers as estrogen levels lower. One of the hardest parts of my job is when I work with women in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, and they have osteopenia or osteoporosis. And it could have been avoided. They've done the fad diets, they've done the plant-based diet. And I'm not anti-plant-based diet at all. I work with a ton of vegans and vegetarians, but they didn't understand how to do it in a smart way.
And also, I feel like that generation was fed such different information than our your generation, my generation, right? Where what does strength training look like? And it's okay for lean muscle mass to grow. It's okay to lift weights. That was not what they were learning back then.
I think But I mean, I think they had more of it. I certainly think that, I mean, I'm 43, but I certainly remember, lose 10 pounds in 10 days. And I remember having a Jane Fonda DVD. I certainly had been in that classic diet culture, but I think they had just been in it for so much longer.
Yep.
So increasing our protein intake and also our protein absorption and utilization slows down as we get older. So most people are not even eating the recommended amount of protein, let alone getting enough in for optimal health in their 40s. Training, building that lean muscle mass, yes, for your metabolism, but also for your bone health as well. So people think about bone health as like impact exercise. It's actually the stronger your muscles are, the more they create tension on the bone, the stronger your bones get. We need to be thinking about managing. There you go. We need to be thinking, so carrying that baby around, then when baby comes out as well, just carry baby around everywhere.
Yeah, that's it.
That's all I get to do. Built-in weighted vest. Managing inflammation. So estrogen levels estrogen is this wonderful hormone. And as a sidebar, something that I always kind of want to say to people is estrogen is not about hormone optimization is not just about fertility for women. It's about long-term health. And in our 20s and 30s and early 40s, we actually want to kind of put estrogen in our bank account. So we've got healthy bones, healthy hearts. And I remember, awful, but I remember being on the contraceptive pill, my friends being on the contraceptive pill, and we would go through and skip our break because we were going on vacation and we didn't want to have to deal with a period. And then
nobody told you that you couldn't.
No, I told you that you could. Again, we'll book another episode for that one. But all of the periods that we have mean that we're secreting that estrogen to lay down for future benefits. Now, as we start making that estrogen, it has an impact on lots of things. So blood sugar balance, muscle, health and maintenance, also inflammation. So estrogen is really anti-inflammatory. This is one of the reasons why we see more cardiovascular disease in women post-menopause. So lots of anti-inflammatory foods, oily fish, nuts and seeds, brightly colored fruits and vegetables. Again, with inflammation goes oxidative stress. Same thing here. I've gone off on a tangent, but I can't remember what I was talking about.
That's all right.
Yes.
Because I'm just sitting here and oh my God, this is also really wonderful information.
So I'd say over 40, more protein, strength training, anti-inflammatory foods, get your steps in, try and manage your stress. So again, estrogen has a cortisol mediating effect. This is why we get so many mood changes in perimenopause. So do what you can to manage your stress. And then getting your sleep. But we know as estrogen and progesterone decline, sleep issues can come up.
Totally. Like you have busted so many myths already in last half an hour that my mind is already very blown. But is there one specific thing that or one or two things, we'll make it two, because the more I know, that you wish people knew about perimenopause and menopause?
So I think we have the basics that we talked about, that, what you can do to help mitigate the symptoms. I think there's two things that I really would say, and they're probably going to be not what you expect. But number one is that what we are seeing in the media right now, okay, fantastic. We're talking a lot more about perimenopause and menopause. Great. It is scaring the hell out of women. It is because all we hear is doom and gloom. That's all we're hearing. Now, I've worked with so many women going through perimenopause and menopause through my own work, to my work as part of Bursalie. We had this wonderful couple of days where we got a group of perimenopause and menopausal women together. And I want to say that all we're hearing about is the really worst case scenario. And that's not everybody's menopause experience by any means whatsoever. There is such a spectrum of menopause experience, but all we're hearing is the worst of the worst. So please don't be scared. Be prepared, be educated, but talk to other women, not on social media, who are in perimenopause, who've been through peri, who are in postmenopause. Talk to them about their experience, because most of the time it's not as scary as we're seeing on social media. That's number one. Number two is do not be scared of HRT. So HRT, hormone replacement therapy, or MRT, menopause replacement therapy, which I use that terminology now. the studies that were done that came up as it's unsafe, very bad science, badly reported, etc., we are seeing so many benefits from HRT. That's not me saying that you have to be on HRT, but that's me saying find a great endocrinologist or OBGYN who will have that conversation with you and talk to you about the options.
There's just so much, I've had a lot of different conversations with different experts in whether it's a pediatrician, a nutritionist, somebody who works in beauty. And one thing that I keep hearing about is this almost fear mongering that I feel like is happening, right? Where it's like it isn't actually black and white. Everything is shades of gray.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of people are just having, especially because we live in this social media world where it's like you're either in one camp or you're in another. Like I've heard only bad things about HRT where it's like, avoid. And it's so refreshing to hear that it's like, actually, don't be scared of it because, sometimes our bodies can't give us everything that we need.
If you are in menopause or postmenopause, your body is not making estrogen and progesterone. Now, we are living a lot longer in postmenopause than we ever did. Now, we see so many benefits of estrogen in terms of reducing osteopenia, osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, even some of the estrogen-related cancers. Now, this is why you have to have a great conversation with a really good medical professional. And what I would say is if you don't feel comfortable with your endo or your OBGYN, find a menopause certified practitioner. So these are doctors who have been through specialized in menopause training because doctors do not, just like they don't get nutrition training,
right?
You get like 2 hours of menopause training during medical school. Yeah, it's fine. And menopause, and that's it. Because women are not 50% of the population, obviously.
No, of course not.
Nor keeping the population going. But find a, and Versally is a great resource. They have a list of certified menopause professionals. So you can go in there and you can find someone and you can talk to someone about your certain case. Because again, it is these gray areas that we're not talking about. We're seeing all hell breaks loose when you go through menopause. And that's not undervaluing people's experience. I'm just saying there are different experiences. And everything that we see on social media is so black and white and so scare tactics. And that's actually not the truth for anything. It's clickbait.
Yeah, totally. It's just here to trigger us all.
Yeah, and it does. And we fall for it. And we all know better, but we still fall for it because we cannot beat that machine that is social media.
For sure. I mean, and we're all psychologically impacted by it, right? There's a lot of our unconscious that goes into it. But that's all, again, that's another podcast. Jenny, you've just launched a bunch of different things. And I'm mentioning this because I think I could listen to you forever. Like, I think like not only are you super personable and relatable, but you're chock full of knowledge, right? So you've just launched a podcast and you've also just launched a Lean and Clean program as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about those things?
Yeah. So Lean and Clean is my program for women over 40. Now, we technically call it a weight loss program. Really what it is a metabolic health program. But let's be real, we've got to go with these SEO terminologies and these Instagram clickbait. I just want women to come into this program. So it's designed as a program for women over 40, 50, 60, 70 who come in to boost their metabolism, balance their blood sugar, deal with their inflammation, help them navigate the changes that happen in perimenopause and postmenopause. So that's my Lean and Clean program. And then, yes, we're officially launching or announcing the podcast next week. Yay! Creating a podcast is hard work. I've actually loved it. I've actually really, really loved doing it. But it is a lot of work. But we have the podcast coming. I'll be announcing it on social media next week. It's called The Science of Stunning, because a lot of what I do is metabolic health and beauty health, but I really want to put the science back into that one. And the first episode is basically called, I think we've called it like weight gain and belly fat inflammation. Oh my, what the fuck is going on with my body? WTF. Sorry, I wasn't allowed to swear. I'm British, we swear a ton.
Oh, you're allowed to swear.
I was like, okay, all right. WTF is going on with my body over 40. So that's the first episode that we just go into a rapid fire. What is going on over 40? And then all of the episodes after this are about protein and sugar and strength training. And then we're going to do some fun ones with my dermatology friends and my makeup expert friends. So yeah, I'm loving it, but it's hard work.
I know, but it's so much fun. Like you said, it's so much fun. It's so much work, but like, it's so, I think, valuable to a lot of the population because, I'm putting my marketing hat on, right? That's my full-time job. It's like you're positioning yourself as an expert, right? And you're sharing it with people, which is what we need. But then it creates also this, like, we want more, right? Like now it's like, Jennifer, I want to work with you, right? Like, and so that's like, that's the beauty of what podcasting does. It gives people like an insight into who you are and how you work and if they align with that or not. So I think that's so amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. The last thing I always like to end with is there anything you wanted to say that we haven't covered yet?
No, I think the main thing is don't be scared of changes that are happening in your body. I'm in perimenopause, nearly 44. I'm good. I'm still here.
Look at you, and you're stunning.
There we go. Thank you.
And where can people find you?
Yes. So my website is www.jenniferhanway.com. I'm most active on Instagram, which is at Jennifer Hanway. Please do reach out to me. I'm always in my Instagram DMs. Sometimes people just reach out and say hi, and I'm like, 5 minutes later, we've done a full consultation. So Instagram DM me, slide into my DMs. And then the podcast is called The Science of Stunning, and you can find that on Spotify and Apple iTunes.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming onto our podcast. We really, really appreciate it. And we're honored, honestly honored.
Trying our best to make do. Every day is something new, but change don't come. Oh, yes, it's true. Brighter days are straight ahead.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. I hope you like what you heard, or if you're just like, these two are my people, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review.
And hey, if you want to keep the combo going, come find us on Instagram at whatIwishIknew_. We are always up for chatting about the real stuff.
We'll be back next time with more expert interviews, real life stories, and a couple of laughs. Till then, remember, we're all in this together. Bye.
Bye.
Trying our best to make do. Every day is something new, but